Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, as always, Coach Steve, guys. We have another fun episode for you guys today. We are in the beginning of week 4 of fantasy football. Lions, Packers tonight. It's going to be a great game, but we got some fantasy to talk about, guys. It is starts and sits. It's Thursday night. We got to go through, as we always been doing this season here, we're going game by game, talking about some important questions, some starts, some sits, and then any questions that you guys in the chat might have to bring up. So, of course, let me introduce the crew for tonight. Coach John, what is going on, brother?
Nothing much. Another beautiful Thursday. Get to break down the slate of games. We got some good ones. And also, reminder, everybody, first weekend in London. So Make sure you set your lineups super early because we got a London game.
Yes, keep your eyes on for that, especially if someone's like questionable, which I don't think anyone is for that Falcons Jags game. I don't think there's any questionable players, but I think we're okay on that. But yeah, just make sure your lineups are set prior to the morning, at least, if you want to start those players. But no Coach Gibbs today. He will be back soon, though. Don't worry. And we'll get started today, guys. So let's start again. Really, within fantasy news, it's really not too much to worry about. Jalen Waddle clears concussion protocols, great. Saquon's back doing some individual drills. I don't know if he's playing this weekend or not, but it's nice he's back on the field, so that's always a good thing. Gus Edwards is out of the concussion protocol, so he is going to play this Sunday. Austin Eckler has practiced the last 2 days, and I think he is on track to be back on Sunday, which is fantastic. And no Rashard Bateman and Odell Beckham Jr. at practice in Raven today. Again, nothing too crazy. Unlike last week when we had like a billion people that were like not playing Thursday. The injury report is not bad this week. So that's, again, there's really not much to know about the news, but for you guys to know. Yeah. All right. So again, I said the fantasy news was going to be quick today, guys. So it is really getting into the nitty gritty of the games today. And maybe we'll have some questions, hopefully, in the chat at some point. So let's start from the top. John, you mentioned it. London game, Falcons Jaguars. The biggest question I think we need to ask ourselves is in a one QB league right now, do you continue to play Trevor Lawrence? He has not been good over the last 2 weeks. The offense looks terrible. Do you consider him a start still for you in week 4?
It always depends on your options, but I think Trevor Lawrence is, you can make a case to fade him over a lot of guys because the thing with Trevor Lawrence is, you're not going to get a lot of floor with rushing. It is all on the back of touchdowns, and he's only had 3 touchdowns for the first 3 games. So he's not throwing a bunch of touchdowns right now. Now, I think it will regress back to normal. I don't think he's kind of a low touchdown guy. I think Calvin Ridley, has got a case of the drops right now. And so the offense will click. We saw this happen last year. Last year, off to a slow start. By like week 6, 7, they started really humming. So I'm nervous about Trevor Lawrence for sure. Yeah. But I'm probably sitting him this week. I want to see a little bit of something. But it obviously depends on who you got. If you're sitting on a guy like a Kirk Cousins or a Brock Purdy, I would probably play them over him. But I don't know if I'm at the point where I'm willing to go as low as like Jameis Winston or that level. I think I'm still playing Trevor over those guys, but it's been rough in Jaguars country.
Yeah, it really has been. And, and I mentioned in an article I write every week that Trevor Lawrence is terrible against Houston. And he did terrible once again against Houston. And I looked at, the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence, he's been there for 3 seasons now. And, what he does in London. How well does he perform in London? Now, I hate to use the first year because it was so bad, but in a general sense, he averages about 180 yards and 1 touchdown and an interception and a half in his 3 starts over in London. So which is not great, obviously not great. He doesn't really do that well in London. But this Falcons defense is just decent. I think there's a chance for him to be able to bounce back in this game here. I think if you drafted him or have been using him in Dynasty, I feel like you have to just kind of roll with it unless you really have that great backup option to play in matchups this week. So I would stick to Trevor Lawrence if I can and roll him out at least for one more week before we consider him not a must-start asset, I think, in fantasy. We have a question in the chat here, Marcus. Half-point PPR, 1 flex, 1 RB. So he needs a flex and an RB between Mostert, Tyler Lockett, Puka, Miles Sanders, Jerome Gibbs, and Jerome Ford. And Brandon Ayuk. Okay, so he's got a lot of options.
Ooh, well, in my mind, Mostert for sure is in there. And then, oh man,
it's tough.
I don't love Jahmyr Gibbs on a Thursday night with Montgomery coming back.
Yes.
Puka, I think you can always, lock him in. I mean, he's a good option. He didn't look great last 2 weeks, but still he's getting over 10 targets a game. It's hard to argue with that. So and then Ayuk coming back from an injury kind of scares me. I'm not quite willing to throw Ayuk in there. So if I had to pick 2, I would do Mostert in my running back slot and then Puka in my flex. I just think that gives you sort of, upside and a little bit of floor volume with Puka. So right. I'm cool with that. That's probably the way I would go.
Yeah, I think I think I would do the same. I think I would start Mostert because I want a piece of this Dolphins offense and I expect that Bills Dolphins game to be somewhat high scoring. And I think they will use their running backs just like they did this past week to some extent. And I think for me, it comes down to, I know I love Brandon Ayuk, but he's coming off an injury, so I don't know how much I trust him. But it's really between Lockett and Puka for me. And I think I'm going to lean Puka just because he is seeing those 10-plus targets a game. So I'm right there with you, John. Puka and Mostert for me in this format here.
Perfect.
And Marcus, thank you for that question. We appreciate it. So like I said, you start Bijan Robinson, you start Travis Etienne, you start Evan Ingram, you start Calvin Ridley, you start Christian Kirk. I think that's pretty obvious. Some sits, see Desmond Ridder, Tyler Algier, and Zay Jones in this game here. Are you starting London and Pitts? Pitts had a better week this week. London didn't really have a good week. Are you going back to them?
I think Kyle Pitts. Look, if Kyle Pitts is tough because he saw 9 targets. I'm not super scared of the Jaguars defense, but I mean, Desmond Ridder just hasn't really looked great. He just is. It's like it was 9 targets, but out of those 9, like 6 of them were catchable. So it's just, I don't know. I keep beating my head against the wall, putting Kyle Pitts in my lineup, thinking it's gonna click eventually, but I'm not opposed to sitting them for a lot of other people at this point. I get it. If you're tired of this kind of Kyle Pitts ride, it's getting gruesome. It looks nice that last week he had 9 targets.
Jonnu Smith also had 8 targets.
Jonnu Smith had 8 targets, which is crazy that, we're doing this. But, I think Kyle Pitts is scary because he's always, he's talented enough to always sort of break a big play. But at this point, until Desmond Ridder starts looking a little better and this offense starts moving the ball more, I'm okay sitting Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I feel like it's really hard to sit Pitts unless you have a backup option at tight end, and there's really not a lot of great options that you can kind of stream this week just by looking at like the matchups and everything and players on streamers. So you might have to start Pitts and kind of just roll with that. Drake London, I don't really want to start. I mean, you're asking for too much boom or bust appeal with him, and I'd rather just let him sit on my bench and say, oh man, I should have started him, but I'm like, no, I don't because it's what he's been doing on and off all season. So yeah. He is he's on a sit side for me, but again, that's why I have him on the line because we wanted to mention him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, he's close. London is one of those guys that it's funny. Drake London and Kyle Pitts, I feel like, are the same story. It's like the talent is through the roof. It's like we're just not giving them the ball for some stupid reason.
Right. All right, we have a question in the chat from Ryan. Start 1 full point PPR in this flex spot. Christian Watson tonight, Hollywood Brown. Najee Harris, Cam Akers, or bank on Saquon playing?
I don't think Saquon's playing. I wouldn't bank on that.
I wouldn't either.
I wouldn't bank on that.
But you have a ton of options, so.
PPR makes me want to lean to one of the wide receivers, and I would, because you're not going to get any catches out of Najee or Cam Akers. So Christian Watson or Hollywood. I mean, Christian Watson would be an absolute, like, you'd need some serious stones to, after him not playing any games, being banged up all preseason, to just roll Christian Watson out there tonight on a Thursday night game. But I get it, because I think there is upside there. And Hollywood Brown has steadily been pretty consistent. I mean, he's consistent wide receiver 2, week in, week out. I don't think we're seeing a lot of pop because you got Josh Dobbs throwing him the ball. But I'm okay with Hollywood. I think Hollywood's one of those guys. He's a sneaky good play flex-wise, kind of week in, week out. And to be honest, I've been kind of targeting him in some of my redraft leagues to trade for, in the hopes that Kyler Murray comes back week 8 and you get to ride some highs into the playoffs.
Right now. Yeah, I think I would also lean Hollywood Brown. He has been coming off of back-to-back 14-point games. This is going to be a game where I expect the Cardinals to be coming back from behind, so they're going to have to throw the ball to some extent. So in a full-point PPR league, I think I would lean Hollywood on there. Again, if you really want to, put your draft capital into place with Najee Harris, the matchup is good, and they have allowed the Houston Texans have allowed 5 rushing touchdowns on the season. But I think the best bet for you is Hollywood Brown there. All right, over to the next game here now. The Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. I think the question of the game, I think many people are probably going to want to know, do you start Devon Achane?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of it depends on what are your other options, like who else are you throwing out there, which is interesting because Achane was probably a waiver pickup for most people, so you have tons of other options. And the other one is Salvon Ahmed. Is he coming back? Is he back in the lineup, and is it going to be a 3-person committee versus last week where it was just literally Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane? So I'm hesitant to start him, but it is really tough to bench a guy who just had 225 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like, it's really hard to bench that guy. But the Bills, I do think the Bills are a much more, believe it or not, I think the Bills are a much better team than the Broncos. And the team won't really just run away with the game, literally and figuratively. So, I'd be nervous. I think this is one of the ones where I would be willing to fade Achane, but I don't blame anyone for sticking with the fire.
Yeah, I'd probably vote against it for the most part, unless you're desperate at your RB2 spot, like you're just kind of out of the loop. This is why you picked him up, because you needed an RB. I think in that sense, I would then start him. But if you're set at RB, you have 2 guys that you can rely on, and you don't really need him in your flex spot, I would probably sit him, because I mean, as a Dolphins fan, Salvon Ahmed won't lose his role automatically. I mean, he should, but I don't think he will automatically if he's on the field. So it could be like a 3-way committee, like you said, John. So, and this is a tough matchup. The Bills are not going to be a team that allows you to throw up 50 points before half. So it is going to be a game where it's going to be close, and it's probably going to be a game where they're going to rely on Mostert, because he is the veteran, to be on the field more often than not. And I think they'll give packages to Achane more than letting him kind of roll what he did this past week. So I would advise against it. But if you're desperate as RB2, there's that boom or bust appeal to him. So, all right. Some starts. You start Tua, you start Josh Allen, you start Raheem Mostert. James Cook's a good start, Tyreek, and Stephon Diggs. Some sits. I'm sitting both Damian Harris and Latavius Murray. I'm not starting a Dolphins tight end. I'm not starting a Bills tight end in this game here. And before we get to these middle guys, we have Albert. Welcome back, Albert. Pick 2, full-point PPR, Jahmyr Gibbs tonight, James Cook, or Ramondre Stevenson. Ooh, that's fun.
Pick 2, full PPR. Well, it's definitely James Cook. James
Cook is 1, yes.
James Cook's 1, so you're really picking behind Jahmyr Gibbs or Ramondre. Oh, boy. I'll tell you, listen, as a Patriots fan, seeing Zeke get all that work last week was a little nerve-wracking. So the Cowboys are a tough team. I mean, I know they just lost to Arizona. Oh boy. I mean, I would say full PPR, Ramondre or Jameer. I'm sticking with I guess I'll keep riding Ramondre. Jameer Gibbs with Thursday night players, I just don't think ever really have big upside games. It's usually lower scoring. And with David Montgomery coming back, Jameer Gibbs could lose some goal line work. I'd feel more comfortable with Ramondre. I would feel more comfortable with Ramondre, but again, if full PPR, Jameer Gibbs could catch 5-6 balls tonight and you'd end up being a good, a decent game. I just think Ramondre and has more touchdown upside. So I'd maybe go that way. I'd do James Cook Ramondre. Lock it in.
I think I'm going to go Ramondre too here. I love Gibbs, and I'm really hoping his role expands. But again, his role just hasn't been there. Yeah, there was one game where he had 9 targets. That's great. There was the one game without Montgomery, he had 17 carries. But just really hasn't seen it put all together for him on the field here. And until he does that, it's kind of hard to trust him in this league. We know Ramondre is going to probably see 5 or 6 targets in this game here. He sees the groundwork. His role isn't going to go away. Just Zeke Elliott's role, I think, will fluctuate up and down as the season goes on. And I think Ramondre's safe. Gibbs, again, he doesn't have that steady flow yet. So I'm going to hold off on Gibbs, and I go Cook and Stevenson too. Thanks, Albert. Do you start Gabe Davis?
Yeah, you certainly can. Gabe Davis is, we talked about him all off season, the first couple weeks. Gabe Davis is the perfect boomer bust flex play. He could go out and give you 3 for 37, or he could give you, 5 for 110 and 2 scores. It's crazy. So I'm willing to start him, kind of week in, week out. I think this is a decent matchup where, Buffalo is going to have to throw the ball deep, make some big splash plays. Gabe Davis is that guy for them. So I'm okay starting Gabe Davis this week.
Yes, I like that. He's okay. He's very boomer bust. If you have to have that boomer bust mentality going in with him. Jalen Waddle, kind of a similar boat right now. He's been kind of boomer bust for us this season so far. He has, against the Bills in the past, has been kind of like the wide receiver that is successful between him and Tyreek last year. So I think you're okay starting him, but just to know that he does have a little boomer bust appeal to his game as well. So, but he should still be in lineups this week.
Yeah.
Next game, Denver Broncos and Chicago Bears here. Do you start Justin Fields in a 1 QB league?
Nope.
No, I like it.
Nope. I'm not starting Justin Fields. I'm not dropping him either, though, because I've heard some crazy people be like, oh, you could cut Justin Fields. Do not do that. Hang on to Justin Fields. You hope he maybe pops. He's going to have a good game on your bench. And then once that happens, you start the conversation of, do I put him in the lineup again? But until further notice, you can't start Justin Fields. It submarines your team when you get 10 points from your quarterback. It's it's brutal. So I just can't see a scenario, and especially in a bad matchup against the Broncos, who is a good defense, even though they just got absolutely trounced by Miami. I do think this is a sort of a get right game for at least the Broncos defense. I mean, if they get embarrassed by the Bears back to back, you're firing your defensive coordinator, you're firing people. So I do think Denver Broncos defense comes out, plays hard, and plays really well against the Bears. So I'm sitting Justin Fields.
Yes, I said Justin Field though when I put it in there. But yeah, I would. I don't want to start him, but if this is going to be the game where he blows up finally, I kind of want a part of it, and I want to kind of take that risk. But in the same sense, I understand sitting him this week if you have a better option. Like if you had Geno on your bench, I'd go after Geno over Fields, because it's really hard to trust Fields and what he's been producing for us. But man, this could be the game where he finally blows up. But again, we haven't really been saying that the last few weeks, but this is the game that for him to do that. So you start Cortland Sutton. I think you start Judy. You start DJ Moore enough. You start Javonte Williams on the ground at least. I think he's seeing that groundwork. You start Cole Kmet as a tight end. Not thrilled with it, but you start him. Darnell Mooney, you sit. Samaje Perine not seeing the work, and Adam Trotman's a sit. Russ is fine, but he's just a guy. Again, he's gonna maybe get you 225 and 2, but he's not you have to start him, but you also could sit him.
I would play Russell Wilson over Justin Fields in a heartbeat. Yeah. In a heartbeat.
Yeah, I like that. Do you start the two Bears running backs at all? Are they in your slot for like an RB2 potential this week? We just saw the Broncos get ran on for like 300 yards.
You certainly could. I think you can. I think both Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson are, fine RB2s. I just question their upside just because of how bad the offense is. But they're both, they're both fine, solid RB2s.
Yeah, they're like nice desperate plays if you need it, and the matchup is favorable.
Yeah, like if you're missing Saquon or you're missing, whoever. Say you had J.K. Dobbins and whatever it is. It's like if you're struggling at running back and you're looking at Roschon Johnson or A.J. Dillon tonight, like I'll take Roschon. Like I'll take the chance there. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's kind of how you have to treat them until this offense starts getting better.
Right. Marvin Mims, again, he's been playing well, but he's only seen like under 30% of the snaps. You can't trust that in your lineups just yet. If he was playing 70, I'd say he's got to be a must start. But for right now, don't start him.
What are we doing? He looks so talented. His punt return was crazy. His touchdown 2 weeks ago was nuts. I mean, he's like, why are we not Broncos? What are you doing? Why aren't we not giving this ball to him more? It's crazy.
Yeah. Cameron's in the chat here. He said, what up, coaches? 0-3 start. Hate to see that. What would you do with this squad? 14-team PPR. All right. So real quickly, take a look, John, and tell me what we would do with this squad. If you have something that, you could do for it offhand real quick.
Oh, man. So it looks like you're probably getting let down a little bit by Burrow. I mean, that stinks that Joe Burrow's been letting you down a ton.
Drake London all been.
Yeah, your wide receivers. I mean, Goddard's okay for a tight end. I'm not totally like he's blowing it for you, but he's not doing what you expected.
Right.
But you need some more wide receiver. You need something because Zay Jones doesn't look like he's going to play. I mean, maybe you cash in on sort of the hype of Zach Charbonnet right now. Package Charbonnet and Drake London and try and upgrade your wide receiver too. I think you're fine with Bijan and Javonte. I think you're good there. I like having Jalen Warren and Marvin Mims and Elijah Morris and Brian Robinson, who's, by the way, having a sneaky good season. And Zay Flowers. I'm okay with all those guys kind of as like your bench flex rotational guys. I think you need to figure out that wide receiver too. And in my opinion, I would cash in on Charbonnet's good game and package up Charbonnet in London. See if you can get, maybe get, I don't know, Mike Evans. Like I'm trying to think of who you could get without really breaking the bank.
Yeah, I would use any of the running backs besides Bijan Robinson and Drake London, and use Drake London and one of the other running backs, and get yourself a better wide receiver too. Like I'm okay starting Brian Robinson next to Bijan all season. I'm okay with that.
Sure.
So if you want to take Javonte and throw him into there to try to upgrade that wide receiver spot, I would be looking at Waddle. I'd be looking at maybe T. Higgins. I would be looking at even Michael Pittman. I like Michael Pittman, what he's been doing this year. Like I would try to upgrade.
Pittman's a great option. I like
that.
Pittman
might be your most realistic option, to be honest.
Pittman's a good one. Pittman's a good one.
I would look for somewhere in that range there. And you just got to hope Dallas Goedert can bounce back at some point because he has been off to a slow start. But it's really hard to get a tight end upgrade, which there's not many tight ends.
Yeah,
no one's going to want to trade their tight end.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, there's unless you can finesse like Luke Musgrave or Laporta from somebody. I just don't think there's really anybody other like Dallas Goedert's just as good as Kyle Pitts or any of these other.
It's just a bad slot start from that.
Bad start. Yeah, bad start.
I appreciate Cameron always joining in here. Oh, AS is a question real quick. Need wants Christian Watson, Chris Godwin, or DeAndre Hopkins, 0.5 PPR.
I'd probably go Godwin.
I would go Godwin too, probably.
Godwin. I'm just having trouble trusting Christian Watson first game back, after an injury.
Yeah. He said he has Amari Cooper and Zay Flowers, which you both start those, but
of course you're starting those. And
I go Godwin. Yeah,
I like Godwin. Godwin's good floor. You got your pop with Zay Flowers, who should be in line for a great game.
Yep.
I would take the floor of Chris Godwin at this point.
All right, John. Do you start Kareem Hunt first game?
Probably not. I mean, you'd have to be real desperate to be starting Kareem Hunt, so I probably wouldn't.
Oh, hold on. Last time.
Yeah, it's just
he was talking about Godwin, and they're like a 5 point. He's the king of 5 or 6 points. Yeah,
I mean,
and
he is.
Said,
He is.
Last time I didn't play Swift on Thursday night and got cooked. Yeah, that is tough there. Again, if you want to take that risk, I mean, it's there. It's just you have to go with the injury concerns that Watson's coming off a hamstring injury that he doesn't re-aggravate it during the game. So if you want to take that risk, take the risk. But just know that there's a 0-point outing for him, but there's also maybe a 20-point game from him. But Godwin does play slightly better against the Saints, and we'll talk about that when we get there, but he does play better against the Saints usually because Mike Evans kind of gets locked up. But I'm sorry, John, do you start Kareem Hunt at all?
I wouldn't, no. And especially against the Baltimore Ravens run defense, I'm okay with, just hands off on Kareem Hunt until we see more. Again, the problem is this has now become sort of a murky committee. And so, if Kareem Hunt doesn't sort of separate himself from Jerome Ford, they're just going to use Jerome Ford around the goal line. So you're not getting any touchdown upside with Kareem Hunt. So I just don't, to me, you'd have to be real desperate to be rolling Kareem Hunt out there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I'm coming on the same boat. I really want to see him see more work before I want to see what a full game of work that he had instead of the limited that he got in a game before I trust him in my starting lineups, and like an okay matchup. I mean, I know Zach Moss did great last week, but Jerome Ford is going to still see the bulk of the work early on, at least for another week or two. So Ford is, again, a start. Zay Flowers is a start. Mark Andrews is a start. Again, they're tough matchups, but their talent is good enough that you start them, like both Flowers and Andrews. Because I think the Browns are they're number 1 against wide receivers, number 1 against tight ends. They're number 2 against RBs. They're number 4 against quarterbacks this year in terms of fantasy points per game. It's really tough to start anyone against the Browns, but
and it's
Mark
basically
Cooper,
just Myles Garrett that's making this defense. Like he's sacking the quarterback, he's pressuring them on every play. Like It's crazy how much that one player is affecting how good the Browns defense is. So yeah, it's a tough matchup, but I think you just, especially with no OBJ, no Rashad Bateman, you have to start Flowers and Mark Andrews.
Of course, yeah. And again, like I said, like John just said, you sit Bateman, you start Odell, you sit David Njoku, you sit the Baltimore Ravens running backs, and this would be a situation where I'd want to start the Bears RBs or Devin A. Chain over these guys. So that was a situation there. Quarterbacks, their quarterback matchups are terrible this week here. I don't really care for them, but they are like borderline QB1s, even Lamar Jackson, but he's got that rushing floor, so it's not too bad. Do you start Elijah Moore? He's been seeing so many targets. He's got, I think, 24 targets and 6 carries on the season here. Do you start him as a flex or no?
Yeah, I think you can. I think you can. It's it's tough right now because the Browns offense and Deshaun Watson hasn't been spectacular. They looked better last week. So, maybe the rust is finally starting to come off. So I'm okay starting him. He's a good wide receiver 3. Yeah, he's a wide receiver 3 in my mind. He's fine. I'm not dying to get him in my lineup, but if you have to start him, he's a good start.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And then I think I should have probably put Donovan Peoples-Jones on the sit, but I have him in the middle.
Yeah, I would
probably a sit. Yeah. Cameron's got a question back. Now that we talked about his team, he wants to know help him pick an RB2 and a flex this week. So obviously his team's 4-point PPR. Who do you play this week?
RB2 would be Javonte, and then my flex. I don't think Zay Jones is playing. I read a report that he's not. So my flex would probably be Brian Robinson, which is crazy to think about. Just because I want to play Marvin Mims, but we just talked about it. He's not getting enough snaps. He's not getting enough targets thrown his way.
I think if you're 0-3, you need to take a risk, and Marvin Mims, I feel like, is a perfect risk this week. If you think you're going to win, Cameron, if your team's projected to win, go with the safe route, like John just said. But if your team is maybe projected to lose by 10 or 15, 20, maybe, go Marvin Mims and go for that potential big play that this bad offense defense thing is going to happen with the Broncos and Bears.
Yeah, you know what? I'm with you. Full PPR, take the shot that Marvin Mims breaks a big one, and just take that chance. You never know.
All right, let's keep moving here. Titans Bengals. Do you start any Titans? That's the big question. Do you start any of them? Mostly it's Derrick Henry, I think.
Yeah, basically,
but do you start them?
I think you got to start Derrick Henry, but other than that, no. I think you start Derrick Henry and hope he has a big game.
Yeah. So other starts, you start Joe Burrow, you start T. Higgins, and you start Jamar Chase. That's pretty obvious. You sit Tannehill, Tajay Spears, Nick Booker-Keene, Treylon Burks, Tyler Boyd, any Bengals tight ends. We just talked about kind of Derek Henry. Again, Hopkins kind of on that, like, I really don't want to play him either. Chiga Kwankwa, he has a decent matchup, but it's hard to trust that offense. You're taking a risk starting him. And same thing with Hopkins, but he is the leader. He's a guy who's going to get you 8 or 9 points and maybe in the game. I mean, if you're looking for that, that's kind of what Hopkins, I think, gives you. What about Joe Mixon? Joe Mixon's got a tough matchup. Hasn't really been playing that well, but has seen all the work basically this year.
Yeah, I think, Joe Mixon is who he is at this point. It's not always pretty. His floor is pretty low, but because you're on Cincinnati, you will have scoring opportunity, and he's got a chance at a 2-touchdown game as good as any other running back. So I think you have to play him. It's almost like Najee Harris, but on a way better offense. It's like you got to play him and hope for the best. But at least Joe Mixon's on the Bengals. So
sure. Titans still hasn't allowed a 60-yard rusher yet since last year. So
really? They haven't allowed a 60-yard rusher since last
week
year.
3 of last year.
Holy smokes. That's actually a cool stat.
Yes.
Good for the Tennessee Titans defense.
Yes. All right. Over to the Steelers-Texans game here. Who do you rather start, Najee Harris or Dameon Pierce? 2 running backs that have greatly underperformed, but have both amazing matchups this week.
I know. I guess probably Najee. I think the Texans are changing their identity and really leaning into CJ Stroud. They're throwing the ball at a crazy rate. Najee, I tweeted about it the other day. I don't know why people are like shocked that he's like not fast. It's like he's never been fast his whole career. He's never been fast. So again, Najee is one of those guys. It's not pretty. He's not Achane. He's not going to rip off some 70-yard score. It's like it's just 19 to 23 touches and at 2.7 a clip, and you hope he gets in the end zone. So I'm okay sitting Najee if you want. I don't know how many other guys you have on your bench that'll get a guaranteed 15 to 20 touches, but
it's mostly because of the Dameon Pierce and
yeah. No. But I'm saying, but I'm playing Najee over Dameon Pierce. Yeah, right. I would play Najee.
Right. I think I would too. Just because Dameon Pierce is actually doing worse than Najee Harris. I think Harris is like a 3.1 yards per carry. Dameon Harris at a 2.4 yards per carry on the season here, even though he's seeing all the work. And again, I think it will be easier for the Texans to pass still because the Steelers against wide receivers have been terrible this year. So they're going to pass the ball once they've been doing very well. So it might leave Dameon Harris still in the dust for him to have a good game. So Najee is going to see his work. Whether or not he slips with Jalen Warren is another question. But yeah, I think I'd split with Harris there too. From starts, I think you start CJ Stroud. I think he's been playing well enough. George Pickens, Nico Collins. I think you can throw Tank Dell as a flex this week. Pat Fryermuth's fine. Sitting Kenny Pickett, sitting Allen Robinson, Calvin Austin, even though he had a nice flash last week. Dalton Schultz have been a disappointment. Bob Woods is just a guy. Do you play Jaren Warren?
No.
He's still not there yet. Not there yet.
So he's right on the edge, but I don't think that Mike Tomlin will ever. He never has. I don't think he ever will go to a true committee. Jalen Warren will always be,
pretty close last week.
They were close. I mean, it's getting closer because I think of how bad Najee is playing. It's starting to feel kind of like late Zeke and Tony Pollard for sure. Right. But I still don't trust Jalen quite yet.
That's fine. I mean, you had to be pretty desperate to play him. So, but I probably would sit him. But yeah, I mean, I think they could have a good game. But all right, next. Oh, I didn't finish doing this one. Fantastic.
That's okay.
Fantastic. That's what I was supposed to do when I got home from work tonight. So the Vikings and Carolina Panthers here. Are we never starting Alexander Mattison with Cam Akers?
Yes. I am nervous.
So you're not going to start Madison then? The favorable matchup.
I know. I probably wouldn't. So like if I was to put it to the test, like Alexander Madison or Najee Harris, like I'd probably play Najee. So at that point, then, I'm okay if you're sitting Madison. That's fine. I'm very nervous with how this backfield is going to shake out.
I respect it. I think I'm still going to start him. I don't think Cam Akers comes in and sees all these carries off the bat. Like, I think he gets worked into this offense there. He's only been with the team for a week. He might get some groundwork. He might see 7 carries on the ground, but I think Madison will be in for the most important parts, like third down, 2-minute offense, things like that. And I think Madison is still worth at least a flex play or an RB2 play, depending on how your team is. So I still like him enough for that. You start Kirk Cousins, you start Justin Jefferson, you start Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, you start Adam Thielen, honestly. Revenge game. He's looking good against his old team. I'd go that direction. I think you can start Miles Sanders is enough to play him. I would probably sit DJ Shark, Jonathan Mingo, Terrence Marshall, J.K. Osborne, Hayden Hurst probably wouldn't want to start any of those guys. Cam Akers would sit. Bryce Young has a fantastic matchup, but do you trust the rookie coming back, or is it?
I don't. He hasn't looked.
What about like in a super flex league? Would you start him? Or
super flex? Super flex.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, super flex. I'll start.
I think that's still questionable based on how his performance has been.
Yeah, I could get it if you're gonna fade him in super flex, but the matchup is good, so I think he has a bit more of a ceiling than some other guys. But yeah, he hasn't looked great. He hasn't at all.
Okay. So I gotta go back here. Okay, did that. All right. On to the next one here. There's really only one I had on this one here. Really, it is. Are you rolling out Tyler Higbee? Coming off his probably best game of the season so far here. Do you trust him as your tight end 1? Because he's been kind of overshadowed basically with the wide receivers this season.
Yep. Yeah, I guess you could. Tight ends are so tough because really all you're looking, if you don't have one of the top 3 guys, what you're looking for is just a touchdown. So do I think Tyler Higbee has as good of a chance as a touchdown against the Indianapolis Colts as, as like Kyle Pitts? It's like, yeah, I think so. So, if you're willing to roll out a guy like a Kyle Pitts, then I think Tyler Higbee's okay too. But again, I'm not I'm not jamming him into my lineup. I'm not like, I gotta start him over, Luke Musgrave or some of these other names that have been playing better. But he's an okay start. Like if you got Chig Okonkwo and Tyler Higbee, like I'll take Tyler Higbee.
Right. That's a nice comparison. I like that. Yeah, I think in that same situation, I think I would handle that as well. Like it depends who you have. If he's your only guy, you roll him out, you're fine. He's gonna get you 7 points maybe. But I don't know if he's got that upside as he had in like prior years. Like I said, starts, there's a lot of starts. You start Stafford, you start Anthony Richardson, you start Kerryon Williams, Zach Moss, Puka, you start Tutu Atwell. He's been looking very good this season. Michael Pittman, he's been double-digit targets every single game. You sit a Colts tight end. I don't care who the Colts tight end until Jelani Woods comes back. Alec Pierce, Josh Downs had a good game, but that was with Gardner Minshew. I'm not ready to start him just yet. So you sit all those guys into week 4. These last couple ones have been pretty easy.
Yeah. It's funny. We're starting to, because the thing is, and as fantasy football kind of progresses, as the season progresses, we learn more information about these teams and usage, and also it starts to get easier of like these start sits. Week 1, week 2, it's the Wild West. You're like,
I don't know if I can know.
You're like, I'm not in the locker room. I don't know how the coach is going to draw up the plays.
Right. And like I said, we were going to mention Chris Godwin later. Is Chris Godwin a flex option? Like AS in his chat said, he's been the king of like 6 or 7 points a game. But do you play him this week?
Saints are a tough defense, so I got to give credit where credit is due. But Chris Godwin really hasn't been disappointing. He looked good on the field. He's getting targeted. It's just no touchdowns. A lot of the touchdowns have gone to Mike Evans. So, you hope that kind of switches at some point and bounces back. And Chris Godwin gets in the end zone, but I'm okay starting him as a flex. I mean, you're going to get 8 targets. I mean, you could go 6 for 75 yards and hope you get a score. I think that's probably the world of Chris Godwin right now.
Yeah, I think he's good. And he's, like I said, unless you have a better option with more upside, I really like, you can start him as a flex, but again, it just doesn't sit well. Like you're going to get, it's a floor play. You're happy. He's going to get you a decent, he's not going to get you 0, but he's going to get you something decent right now, the way his career this year is going. He has averaged 85 yards over the last 3 games against the Saints because of Mike Evans being locked up by Marshawn Lattimore. So Chris Godwin might be his game to kind of get himself out of his rut so far. So he's good enough to flex still. Supercharge has a question here. Super Challengers. Sorry about that. Trade away Monty and Cortland Sutton for Ramondre. PPR.
Well, I think I would, now that I'm looking at it. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would, because then you shore up. You have probably a very
RB2 now.
Yeah, you have a very high upside RB2. Versus right now, Monty is probably a low end RB2. Right. And Sutton is an expendable asset in my mind. Like Sutton is fine, he's good, but like you can there's plenty of decent wide receivers out there now. It's not that important. Like, I'm okay with Michael Thomas. I'm fine starting Michael Thomas rest of the year versus Cortland Sutton. Shit like that it's different. So I'm okay. I'm totally okay with this trade. I would do it too.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of all 3 guys. I mean, he said Sutton's on his bench right now. So if Sutton's not even one of your main receivers, it's even more of a reason to get yourself an upgrade for an RB2 for the season. Again, I'm not really thrilled with Monty. I'm not super thrilled with Mondre, but he is a solid RB2 on this team here. Sutton has played better this year, but again, Jerry Jeudy is coming back, so we'll see how Jerry Jeudy handles it. He asked, would you consider starting Sutton for Pickens this week?
No, I would play Pickens over Sutton.
I think I would start Sutton this week if I had to pick between the two personally.
I just think the Bears Broncos game is going to be so ugly. I could see that game being 13-10, right? Like that game could be borderline unwatchable. And it's like, I don't really,
that's Andrew. I'm sorry, not Supercharged. That was Andrew asking that question.
Would you apologize? Yeah. I mean, I would play Pickens, but I just am, I'm so turned off by both Denver and Chicago. I don't think that game is going to be fun to watch at all. Like if it's 13-10, I wouldn't be shocked.
I hope not, but yeah. But Supercharge, good trade. You should make it. Andrew, again, John likes Pickens. I think I prefer Sutton. I think the Broncos offense is not really the issue. It's really the defense, and the offense isn't great, but it's not bad. So, and I think Sutton has seen enough work this year that I trust him, even though Pickens has gone nuts the last 2 weeks. But that Texans secondary is pretty tough. So I'm picking Sutton there. So, okay, back to the game here. You start Alvin Kamara, you start Chris Olave, you start Michael Thomas. You sit Baker, you sit Kendry Miller, a Saints tight end, Cade Otton. Rashad Rashid, like you can start him, but I'm not really thrilled about it. Do you start Rashad White?
Against the New Orleans Saints defense, I probably am not. I mean, he hasn't looked great.
I
mean, you might have to because all the running backs.
You start him over the Bears. You start him over Devin Achane.
Yeah, I don't know about Achane, but I would start him over. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I would start him over probably the Bears running backs. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to start him because he's just getting a lot of work. He's just he's just super inefficient, and it's just really, it's too bad because they're not using him in the passing game. It's Rashad White's a fine play. He's now probably in the Najee category for me, but it's just a really, really tough matchup. That the New Orleans Saints front seven looks good. They can get to the quarterback. Rashad White will have a lot of TFLs. So it's just it could go sideways on you.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. Jameis is a decent super flex play if you're looking for a QB2. I think he'll air it out, hopefully. Mike Evans has not done well against the Saints over his career, so you take that with a grain of salt, even though he's been playing so well this season. If you want to play him, you take that risk. If you know his history, you sit him. So it really just depends on how your team is structured. again, it's a scary play. So,
and again, I don't even want to bring this up, but he has been suspended a few times when he plays against Marshawn Lattimore, like kicked out of the game. So
early in his career, so
there's a chance.
Midway into his career.
I'm just saying, there's a chance like you could get one catch for 25 yards out of Mike Evans this week, which is terrible.
All right, over to the Commanders-Eagles game here. Do you trust any Commanders to play in this game?
Brian Robinson Jr. That's the only one you can trust. Everyone else you can't trust.
Right. All right. I like that. Yeah, I can trust him. I actually trust Logan Thomas enough if he plays as a tight end position to trust him. Because the Eagles have been so bad against tight ends this year, especially with the touchdown wise. Jalen Hurts, you start. DeAndre Swift, you start. No questions now. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. Like I said, Logan Thomas, I think, is a start. You sit Sam Howell. You sit Antonio Gibson for the near future. Kenny Gainwell was solid, but I don't think he's going to get enough to be productive enough for us. Like John said, you can start Brian Robinson. He's fine. It's a tough defense, but he did very well against a tough defense last week. And hopefully they give him the passing down work because he's been the better running back by far. Dallas Goedert, like I said, he's not been great, but you can start him obviously still. I think John mentioned that before. Which of the three Commanders wide receivers would you start if you had to pick?
I mean, you got to start Terry. If you have to start any of them, it's Terry McLaurin. Yeah. Jahan Dotson's just not getting targeted, and Curtis Samuel is a gadget player. So I'm okay. I'm starting Terry McLaurin in the Fantasy Coaches League, so you can start him, but I'm starting him as a very meager wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. He'd be the only one I want to start. To be honest, right now, I think I'm going to have Curtis Samuel head ranked of Jahan Dotson because Curtis Samuel is actually producing at least 50 yards. Not a single Commanders player has over 60 yards in a game this season receiving. Not a single one. It's terrible.
Terrible.
But Terry McLaurin would be the one here if I'm going to pick one to start. So, all right. Again, another one that I did not do. Raiders
we don't start anybody in this game.
Well, see what it is. I was going based off my article, and I haven't finished my Raiders Chargers article yet, so that's why it's blank right now. But the biggest question probably is do you start guys like Joshua Palmer and Quentin Johnston this week?
I think you can start Josh Palmer. I want to see it from Quentin Johnston first before I put him out there. Just because Josh Palmer, he's been with the organization. It makes sense that the first game with Mike Williams gone, that Josh Palmer kind of, takes a majority of the snaps. But Quentin Johnston is a first-round wide receiver who's nipping at his heels. So, if over this week, next week, we start seeing the snaps and targets shift, then I'm cool. I think Quentin Johnston's a great bench stash. I think he's awesome. I just don't know if I'm starting him this week. I think, and again, if he blows up, I'm okay. If he blows up on my bench, I'm okay being like, I was wrong. But going forward, I got a superstar, so I think that's kind of how you play it.
Right. No, I like that. I think Joshua Palmer has averaged 5 receptions for 67 yards and about a half a touchdown a game in games where he has 7 or more targets, which in a game like this, I expect him to see 7 or more targets. So he is good enough as a flex play this week. Like you said, I think Quentin Johnston's more of a wait and see. If you're going to start him, you're going to hope for big things, or you're going to get like a 2-catch game out of him. That's kind of what I'm imagining with Johnston's first game here. So don't really want to say that. Quickly, I'll go through the starts and sits real quick. You start Justin Herbert. Jimmy G's a decent super flex guy. Austin Eckler's back, so he is back in the starting place. Joshua Kelly can go back to your benches. Josh
waiver wire.
Yeah. Josh Jacobs is a start. You start Keenan Allen, obviously. Gerald Everett could be a sneaky tight end you start now with Mike Williams gone. Devontae Adams is a start. You can flex Jacoby Myers. Not touching the tight ends on the Raiders, and that's really about it for this game.
it is. Yeah. I mean, if you have Keenan Allen, good luck. You won this week.
Keenan Allen is on pace to break the receiving record and having 17 touchdowns on the season, just like Tyreek Hill. So let's see who does it first.
Yeah.
All right.
Two opposite players too. Like they're two totally different guys.
Exactly. All right, so let's get to the Patriots, your Patriots, and the Dallas Cowboys here. Mondre Stevenson, is he still a strong play?
I mean, yeah, I mean, he's still a solid, like I said earlier, he's still a solid RB2. I'm okay rolling him out there every week, even in a bad matchup. I think the ceiling that we thought Ramondre might have of being a top 10 guy is probably gone, but he's solid enough. He sees enough work that, he's your RB. If he's your RB2, you're in good shape.
All right. I like it. You start Tony Pollard, you start CeeDee Lamb, you start Hunter Henry, you sit Mac, you sit Dak Prescott. I can't trust the Cowboys number 2 yet until I see it again from somebody, either Michael Gallup, Brandon Cooks. Juju's a major sit. Do you think Zeke could have some kind of big game with the Cowboys, enough to play, or are you just not? It's just a fairy tale land.
Not enough to play. Not enough to play, but it would be cool to see for the player. It would be fun to see Zeke, run all over the Cowboys, but I don't think he's fun as hell. I don't think he's gonna. He is, in my mind, probably a very, very high-end handcuff with in good matchups, flex worthy. So that's how I'm treating as Zeke. But against the Cowboys, I'm not.
Yeah, no, I still can't start him, even though I want to see this big game out of him.
That would be great. I would love it.
Like I said, the Cowboys have allowed at least one wide receiver like over 60 yards. I think that's what it was this year. I think that if there's one player that's going to do it, it's either Devontae Parker or Kendrick Bourne. But again, it's really tough to even consider either one of them to start or even a playable flex option. But if you're like in deeper leagues, one of them guys I think could go off this week. Yep. Jake Ferguson has been seeing the targets nonstop, especially in the red zone. Tough matchup. I probably don't want to start him. He isn't much of a sleeper for me this week in this matchup. So, yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, this one is probably going to be either a really low scoring game or it's going to be randomly high scoring for absolutely no reason.
I think this is going to be another one like the Broncos Bears, like just a classic slow. Drawn out chess match of a football. It'll be a fun. Trust me, I'm a huge Patriots fan. It'll be a fun game for me to watch, but it won't be fun for fantasy. It won't be. It won't be like, don't expect big things out of some of these fringe guys. I think obviously your starts. You're obviously starting Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, and Hunter Henry. But you can start Stevenson, but you can start Devontae Parker. I just wouldn't expect big games.
I respect it. All right. Next one is, again, Hollywood Brown. Is he a good start? We just talked about that. We just said, yeah.
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's a good start. He's been consistent. I think he's like the wide receiver 24 on the year. He's getting targets. He's a talented player. I think his biggest problem right now is he's just got Josh Dobbs throwing him the ball. So I'm fine starting him. I'm totally fine.
Yeah, this one was also one of these. You start Brock Purdy, you start CMC, obviously. James Conner is good enough to start. Debo, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, all can start. No issues with them, really. Joshua Dobbs is an interesting superflex QB2, but again, don't probably want to start him. Rondale Moore, I'm not relying on his 33-yard touchdown run to keep his day going, and Zach Ertz has been kind of disappointing with all the targets he has, so that one was pretty easy. So. Chiefs, Jets, a shitty Sunday night football game. Gotta love that. Do we start Breece Hall? He's done nothing in 2 straight games.
I'm okay sitting him. I'm okay sitting him at this point. I think, it was exciting week 1, watching him rip off a couple big runs. But I think the reality of how bad this Jets offense is starting to creep in and affecting Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. So I'm totally fine sitting Breece Hall.
Yeah. He's continuing to see more snaps in the offense, which is great. But the fact that offense is not being able to move the ball for their lives, it's really tough to want to put Breece Hall out there. I would sit him and go a different direction if you could. Like I would consider the Bears RBs, and I think that's like the line drawn where good or bad RBs. Like I know Breece Hall could break one, but he just has 36 yards over 2 games against good defense as well. The Chiefs another good defense, so it's like it's really hard to want to go at that direction. So if you're starting him, you're hoping for the best, but don't expect too much from him. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. I'm starting Garrett Wilson still. I know we had talked about him last week, but he did enough that I'm going to start him in my flex anyway.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
He's just too talented.
Right. Isaiah Pacheco is good enough to start as an RB2. Sit Zach Wilson, far, far away. Dalvin Cook, any other Jets wide receiver, Tyler Conklin, any outside of Sky Moore, we'll talk about in a second, probably sitting every other Kansas City wide receiver. Jarrett McKinnon's 2-touchdown performance. I'm not really buying that for every single week for him to do that. So, but let's go back to Sky Moore real quick here. Are you playing Sky Moore? You did good enough in week 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think
this matchup.
I think you can. The Jets are a tough secondary. I'm not in love with playing wide receivers against the Jets. I think that you'll always be tempted to play Sky Moore because he's got Patrick Mahomes. If Sky Moore was in any other offense, he wouldn't even be a topic of conversation. So I'm sitting him, and if he has a big game, it's whatever, good for Patrick Mahomes. But I just don't. I think we're always going to be chasing this carrot because he's on Kansas City. If he was on any other team, like I said, it would be
like bye-bye.
Yeah, he wouldn't even. He's Curtis Samuel if he's on any other team. So I'm kind of staying away from Sky Moore.
Right. I respect it. I don't think I do have another slide here, but it's blank. So
What's the last game? What's the last game we missed?
Let's see. All right. I'm going to take it off the slide.
Giants
Seahawks.
Yeah.
Darren Waller has really been kind of ineffective this season so far. Let's just pull up his stats real quick here for you, John. Darren Waller has 2 games under 40 yards. He's got the 1 game 6 for 76 against the Cardinals.
Yep.
Is Darren Waller still just a start and set kind of tight end?
I mean, he's a start. I think he's a good. Do
you start Pat Freiermuth over him? Do you start Cole Kmet over him?
Yeah, I probably not Cole Kmet. Pat Freiermuth, I'd consider.
Sam Laporta tonight. Luke Musgrave.
Sam Laporta tonight I would play. Luke Musgrave I would play for sure. I think Luke Musgrave and Sam Laporta are both really, really good tight ends.
Great young tight ends.
Yeah, they look great. And Musgrave is one of those guys who we're all giving the hype to Laporta. Luke Musgrave, he gets in the end zone. He has a big play. I think he looks really, really good. He fits the part. So I would play both of those guys over Darren Waller.
I like it.
But yeah, I think you can play Darren. If like you said, Cole Kmet. Like if you're at Cole Kmet or Darren Waller, it's like I'll still stick with Darren Waller. I'm not sitting Darren Waller for like Tyler Higbee or anybody like that. So yeah, I would probably use like Musgrave and Laporta as like my line. After that, like I'm okay playing.
I respect it. Waller. All right, so we have a question in the chat from Kyle here. Start 2 PPR, Roshan, Jerome Ford, Devin Achan, or Dave Montgomery tonight.
Jerome Ford,
I want to sit Montgomery. We'll start with that. Are you sitting Montgomery in this situation?
I would probably want to sit. I would sit.
He's
Montgomery
coming off that thigh injury. I don't really want to play him.
Yep.
So I would probably sit him, and plus he's not seeing that like PPR upside, so there's nothing there for him for that. So really, it's just down to I think Jerome Ford's our main guy.
I think so. I mean, I think I would play Ford over Roshan, and then Achan if
so Achan or Johnson really like.
Yeah, and I think the way I would use it if Salvin Ahmed is out, play Achan. If he's in, I would probably lean Roshan. That's how I would do it.
That is actually perfect.
Yeah, that's how I would do it. I would play Ford and then just watch the injury report. And if Salvin is sitting, you play Achan.
Yeah, I like that. Jerome Ford, Achan. If not, Roshan Johnson if Savon Ahmed is out. Mm-hmm. So there you go, Kyle. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right. Well, that is going to wrap us up. Monday Night Football, like I said, you start your Seattle players. You don't really want to start many Giants players. I think that's about all we can say about that. If anyone has any last-minute questions, throw them in the chat real quick before we get out of here, and we will answer them. Anything, John, you want to mention before we get going?
Someone brought it up earlier. The holding out hope that Saquon plays. I wouldn't play with that fire. Monday night game. It's highly, highly, highly unlikely that Saquon plays. And if he does play, how effective is he going to be with an ankle injury? And so, I get it. Everybody is desperate for running back right now. I get it. But just don't put yourself in that situation where you have to pick up Gary Brightwell off the waivers because Saquon is a last minute scratch. So I just, that's the one thing I would say. I've had a few people kind of seem optimistic about Saquon Barkley's return, and I'm not at all. So yeah. So that's my one thing. And also subscribe to the show. I feel like we've got a bunch of new listeners, a bunch of new people in the chat. Let's go, baby. We're cranking every week. We're just chugging along, and I love it. I love seeing new people, seeing new faces. It's fun for us.
As do I. But again, thank you all for tuning in, whether you're listening to our live show now through some questions in the chat. We definitely appreciate it. Or if you're listening afterwards on your Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, we do very much appreciate it. We here every Monday and Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking waivers on Mondays, starts and sits like tonight on Thursdays, and of course my random 30-minute show on Sundays when I can get to it. Some last minute start and sit of questions there. So thank you for listening. We appreciate it very much. Go win your week 4s. And have a good one.
Back to back is not far-fetched. We got a couple of Clark Kents. I've been feeling super duper. How the heck they know the future? Come with me, don't be a loser. Grass is green like